Hey gang, just thought that we would do a quick sprint watch here. This is where I go through all of the changes that have happened in the progress tracker for CIG. Just because there's a lot of changes this time, I'll kind of blow through my caveats real quick. So the first one is CIG does their development in Agile, which means that they go in sprints. So basically a team is given a set amount of time, say 2 to 3 weeks, to work on a project, and at the end of that 2 to 3 weeks they reassess and they say, hey, we finished this thing, here you go, it's done, it works perfectly, send it to testing. Or they say, typically more often, we need more time to develop this, let's see what we got, let's keep developing on this, keep iterating on it. Or they'll say another team has to get involved, so for right now we're done until this other team finishes their piece, then we can kind of pick it up again. You'll see that a lot in these, especially the progress tracker. So sprints, because of that, just because something is 100% complete and it looks like the sprint is complete, it doesn't mean that the work on that deliverable is actually done. Even if you have that thing in the game, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's completed. It just means that that sprint is completed. Sometimes it does mean it's completely finished, it's in the game, it's done, they're never going to touch it again, that's it. Usually it means there's more work to be done, just because game development is always an iterative process. So with the caveat out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So typically CitCon, right around CitCon, they usually drop a patch usually right during CitCon. At the end of the big show, they'll kind of be like, and 3 point whatever is live, go play it. Or sometimes stupidly they'll say that at the beginning of the show and everybody goes, plays the new patch, and don't listen to the rest of the show. But that's obviously not what happened this time, since we're still waiting on 3.18 to drop. So because of that, they still had their sort of semi-quarterly post-CitCon reassessment, it looks like. So there's a lot of big jumps on a lot of these sprints, and we'll get to that in a second. So the way that I do this is I'll typically start by reading the roadmap roundup, just kind of reading through what's here verbatim. I might give a couple little comments. I won't be as verbose as I usually am this time. Then we click over to the release view and we just kind of see what's changed here. And then the real meat of what I'm talking about is over here on the deliverables view for the progress tracker. And we'll kind of get into all the big changes that happened from the last patch, or from the last time they updated, which was 2 weeks ago. So with no further ado, I'll have little timestamps down below part. So if you don't want to see one part over the other, you can skip ahead and look at them, at least if you're watching on your computer and not a TV. All right, so let's get started. So this is the roadmap roundup. Usually for this top part here, they will occasionally hide something new in there. This time they haven't, so we're just going to go ahead and get into it. Notable changes for October 26, 2022. With this publish, we've extended the majority of the downstream team's schedules into Q4 2022, with a few remaining coming in subsequent publish. Alpha 3.18. In last week's This Week in Star Citizen post, we mentioned that our next major update, Alpha 3.18, has been testing with our Evocati group, with our next test aiming to go out later this week. As we mentioned, after evaluating this data from our recent Evocati test, we're targeting early December for a live release. This update will not impact IAE, which will now release an Alpha 3.17.4 patch. This has been reflected on the release view with this publish. Additionally, as the Drake Corsair is due to release during the IAE, we're moving its card on release view from 3.18's column to 3.17. Cool. Release view. The following card has been added to the release view. Greycat STV. The Steve. Building, implementing, and balancing out Greycat Industrial's utility ground vehicle, the STV, as a game-ready vehicle. And I actually have one, and I have not driven it yet, so we might do that this weekend. Take it out and visit Lockdown. Well, I guess Lockdown's in space. Maybe not Lockdown. New rivers in Stanton, setting up biome-specific object rule sets around bodies of water and distributing those by placing additional rivers and lakes on Microtech and Hurston, which is cool because Hurston has not had rivers up until this point. It has a couple big lakes. So yeah, that'll be cool. I think that was on there before, so maybe they just shifted it over. Sand Cave archetype, that one's been on there for a while. Establishing the visual language creation pipeline and quality standard for the new Sand Cave archetypes. With this release, cave networks using this archetype will be placed throughout the Stanton system. Now that's interesting because last time they were just going to put one, I believe, on Daymar and Hurston, but now they're saying throughout. That's interesting. Security post Korea reactivation, and again, this is one that's been on there for a while, so I'm not sure why it's getting a new card. They probably just shifted it over to 317 rather than 318. I think that's what it is. Yeah, that's got to be what it is. The following cards have passed their final review for 318, therefore we're changing their stats. Oh, changing their stats to committed. Never mind. They're basically saying that these things are definitely going to be in 318 when it drops. Probably next year at this point. New missions Orison. Oh, security post Korea reactivation. Security post Korea will take a more central role in Stanton security. Crusader security has moved in full-time staff and has begun storing confiscated contraband aboard. Unless given prior authorization, the station will be off limits to all civilians. Now that is interesting verbiage. Unless given prior authorization. Probably if you're a bounty hunter and you're hunting down somebody that's in there to clear their crime stat. I would guess that's it. But it would be cool if you could trade there, just given some of the work, but who knows? To this point, they haven't said that. New missions, Orison. Bounty, assassinate, clear all, and other missions take place on the platforms created for Siege of Orison, which in the future will be distributed across the planet of Crusader to create further content. That's good. Orison needs it. That's all for this week. Join the discussion. Blah, 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 blah. All right. So that's it for the roadmap roundup. Let's go ahead and take a look at the release view. So this is what's actually changed over here. So now you can always tell if a new card or something has been added because they'll put this little yellow dot right there. So you can look up here. PTU version isn't going. You can see that they don't have an Evocati version going by looking at this top part. Anyways, now they've got the Greycat STV as a new one. Again, you got the date or the little dot by it. Drake Corsairs, tentative, but it's looking pretty solid. We'll get to that in a second. Anvil Centurion, Drake Mule, Scorpius, Hole. For 317, the only two vehicles were the Misk, Hole, and the Scorpius, and then we got all of these. Just given the number of unannounced ships they have, there's at least the possibility they're going to be dropping a couple ships on us, and they always drop at least one straight to flyable during IA, so we'll get there too. So for 318, we got the Daymar crash site, and again, these have all gone to committed, which is cool. Gameplay, cargo system refactor, I say this every time, but I'll say it again. Cargo system refactor, salvage, persistent A streaming. Those three things are 318, so they will not drop 318 without cargo system refactor, salvage hull stripping, and persistent A streaming. Once those things are done and past the PTU, that's when this patch will go live. That's pretty much it for the release view. They don't really have anything else hidden down here, I don't think. No, River's Cortec. Well, hang on. No, that's the river on Microtech. We already know about that. It's already in the game. So, I mean, a lot of this, the only thing on this list that isn't... Yeah, nothing new there. The only thing on this list that isn't already in the game is the Corsair. All of this stuff is coming 318. I'm sure they're going to try to drop some other things on us at 317.4. And I might speculate on that a little bit more maybe in another stream, but right now you can kind of tell I'm going a little bit quick on that, and that's because there's a lot of changes over here on the progress tracker. So the progress tracker, is, in my opinion, where the real meat is. The problem is that, kind of like I was saying during my caveat, not many people seem to really know how to read this or what it's actually telling them. It's giving great information. It's just people will read these things and be like, oh, it's 100% complete. Why isn't it in the game? It's because it's measuring sprints. So these right here are different teams that are working on this deliverable. And when that team has completed a sprint, which is what this light blue line is, that just means that team has completed the sprint. And all this N bar means is that as far as they've planned for right now, everybody's completed their sprints. What will be likely to happen here, Aussie Auto Station is one that's been around for a while and they've wrapped it a few times. In reality, they're just kind of waiting for other people to, or other teams to come in and work on things. A lot of these teams are pretty small. Think like 3 to 5 people. So it's not like these teams are hundreds of people slamming away at this. It's 3 to 5 people kind of hammering away at very specific problems. And sort of when they start combining them all together, that's when you start getting the whole deliverable to go. But anyway, so right here, the Squadron 42 team has done it. Auto Station, like I said, it's wrapped in the past, but they added another 42 weeks. You'll notice that there's not another 42 weeks here. So they've been working on this thing and kind of improving it. Again, I've said this in past sprint watches, but I think they're kind of angling for a go, no go for Squadron 42 to move to beta, not gold, beta. That's where it's feature complete, where they're kind of like, all of the mechanics that we want are in the game. All of the story is kind of laid out the way we want to. Now we need to polish it and get it working and knock out the bugs. That's beta. And I think that at the end of this year, they're going to have a go, no go. And it might be that they'll be like, this isn't ready. We need this, we need this, we need this, we need this. We're not ready. And it'll be another 6 months to a year before they have another go, no go. But I think we're getting close. Just based on some of these deliverables, I think we're getting close. We'll get into that. But they added 42 weeks, but again, we've only got about a month until that wraps, which will put it near that go, no go section at the end of the year. And a lot of the Squadron 42 deliverables are like that. And I'm going to start going a little faster. So the AI elements, aerodynamic control surfaces. This is just one that I think is huge and very cool for the flight model. Going to be pretty necessary, but you can see we got a little ways to go near the end of Q1. So might be a sneaky ad for 319. My theory for 319 is they're going to drop it here at the end of Q1 of next year, sometime around March, sometime around Invictus, which is the military equivalent of IAE. And then they'll probably drop 4.0, or planning to drop 4.0 around this time next year. Sometime around CitCon, they'll probably drop 4.0, just based on some of the deliverables. So let's scroll on down to AI Untrained Combat. This one added 15 weeks. A lot of like 10 to 15 week ads, I noticed, where they're just kind of adding stuff. But again, you can sort of see that going to be into early next year. So a lot of this is just timing, where they realized they weren't going to get 318 out as quickly as they thought they would. They had more problems with persistent AE streaming than they probably figured they would, but they were hopeful. But I'm assuming what happened was the leads were going around saying, well, we got another few months until this thing's ready to go out the door. If you had 8 weeks, what could you do with it? Could you polish this up and make this better? Or would it just be putting like a fresh coat of paint on it and not really worth your time? Do you want to move on to the next system, or do you want to like really get the system chugging along? And it looks like most teams are kind of like, let's spend more time iterating, which is kind of, that's one of the advantageous things about Agile, is you can do that. And with a program like CIG has, you have a little bit more freedom to do something like that. But untrained combat added 15 weeks. AI usable system. This is just the AI being able to use vehicles and stuff like that. Pretty much any usable. Going via ammo and stuff like that. Added 9 weeks, but you can see it only has like about a month to go from this view. So it was ending back here. Now it's ending out here. AI vehicle perception. So this one I'll just read it out. The feature will give AI the ability to both perceive and detect vehicles from the ground, as well as select ground-based targets when piloting their own, using both vision and radar. So that one's pretty big. Added 11 weeks, so a little over 2 months. Let's see, the Anvil Crucible. Again, this is a really, really cool ship that'll be huge for any sort of space-going fleets. If you're a pirate org without a Crucible, you're probably doing it wrong, because you're going to have to patch your ships up away from garages or hangars. So this is just the concept pass, though. They're not actually building the ship yet. This one actually dropped by 2 weeks, so it used to be 22 weeks, now it's 20. So guess it's going along well. Anvil Legionnaire. So this is one where they kind of had a huge gap in between this work and when they were going to actually start building it. I think they were going to start building it around the first of the year. So the vehicle feature team, which is the team that dropped here. So this is a good example that they're 100% done. They aren't. The vehicle feature team still has to go in and build the thing, but it's gone. I just like to mention that because it's a good example of those ones where when they have big gaps in between different teams handing off, usually it's a good sign that that thing's not a big priority for them. AR and map marker system rework. So this is one that I was thinking would be a sneaky add to 318. It's not looking like it would make that. Well, I don't know. If 318 is real late in the cycle, it's possible, but I think this is more likely a 319 add. It added 13 weeks, so again, just more polish. Archon Station. This is one located inside the coil. I think this is the one that we spend the most time on. If you, in the vertical slice, it's the one we're leaving from, the Idris is flying next to. I think that's Archon Station. But that one increased by 21 weeks again. Even though it added 21 weeks, it actually wrapped back here, but I'm guessing the team just kind of kept whittling away at it. Got a little over a month to go on it, so still looking good for that Squadron 42 target, if that's actually what's going on. Arena Commander Classic Race Mode overhaul. This is kind of a cool one. A lot of people that really like the racing gameplay are kind of happy about this. They actually doubled the amount of time on this one. It used to be 12 weeks, now it's 24. So we went from almost finished to a little over the halfway mark. The Argo SRV added 4 weeks, which isn't uncommon. Usually, especially with this one, you can sort of see that it's wrapping up over here. But you'll notice the only teams that are working on this are the vehicle content teams, which means that the downstream teams, which is like audio and VFX and UI, all of those guys have to come in and work on this ship after the outside and the inside is made. Just kind of make all those working switches, make sure all the MFDs are where they are. And nowadays, you got to make sure that it's got like working vents and stuff like that, and power structures that you can do it. So yeah, this is finished here. It's going to definitely go another couple months beyond that. But still, it's getting close. SRV is getting close. But the SRV is pointless until they finish shipboard tractor beams. Artificial gravity, cool one for the engineering gameplay or game loop. Ending up here, so that one could be Q2 of next year. That's probably going to be a 4.0 add if I had to guess. That one added 12 weeks, so about a third more time. They had just started working on it. Narrative team, can't really blame them. I'm guessing the EUP2PU team, since they just started working on it. got a couple weeks in, and typically you'll see these deliverables will jump at a couple points. They'll jump right when the team first starts working on it, because they'll go to them in the first place, and they'll be the leads will say, okay, how much time do you need for this? And they'll be like, I don't know, gotta give us 6 weeks and we'll reassess. And then they get a couple weeks in, and they've done their planning sessions and everything, and they say, okay, yeah, this will take 38 weeks. And then they kind of go with that. And then near the end of it, usually when they've gotten about 2/3 of the way through, they have a real good idea of the knowns and then unknown knowns and all of that. So, to badly quote Rumsfeld, and they get more and more accurate the closer they get to it, or the more they work on it, which isn't surprising. And kind of on the same thought with the whole engineering gameplay, atmospheric pressure damage, it added 32 weeks up to 71, but you can see they've only got a week and a half left. So next week they'll get to the bottom of that one. So I'm guessing they just polished it up. So when you fly down in Crusader, you might take crush damage. Kind of cool. Van Merchantman. I always like to talk about the Van Merchantman. 128 weeks. It hasn't moved at all. I think we're a hair over 70% of the way through it. Again, you'll notice while the downstream teams have been involved, this is an alien ship, and it's the first big alien ship, so it's going to have unique AI, it's going to have unique lighting, door panels, switches. Things will work weird on this ship, so don't expect this one at the end of Q2. It's going to be coming at the end of next year, which BMM is my baby, but it takes as much time as it takes. I'd rather them make it right. Like the Carrick turned out pretty good. Bombs jump back on. They had it wrapped a while ago, but again, this is something where they'll iterate on things, and so they'll be like, okay, we're done with the Moab because that's the only bomb we have in game. Now they have the A1 Spirit coming in. They're probably going to add bombs to the Gladius and probably the Gladiator. The Gladiator is actually a bomber. I don't think they would to the Eclipse, but anyways, they're going to start adding more complexity to bombs, and so the weapon content team, which is this WCT here, jump back in and start working on it. Added 40 weeks, but again, you could sort of see that it's wrapping up here. Cargo system refactor. Again, this is one where it's now, was it committed? Let's see if it's committed for 318. I don't think it is. Okay, it's still tentative, but it's looking good. This will probably be one that Evocati will be playing around with. Got about a month left on it, but it's had a month before. So we'll see. But I think that one's pretty accurate. Just the extra time on 318 means it'll definitely get in there. Okay, so now we're getting down into the Squadron 42 chapters. So again, I've said this in other Sprintwatches where the chapters, they're going to keep polishing these and polishing these and polishing these. Even especially when they move into beta, you're going to keep seeing these grow and grow and grow, because they don't want a situation like Cyberpunk had, where people go to do the mission and they get 5 minutes into the game and it's broken, then they can't finish the whole game, because Squadron 42 will be more on rails than Cyberpunk was. Cyberpunk was largely an open world with like a story that you followed. This one's going to be a story that you follow. You might be able to do a couple branching paths, but it's largely telling a singular story from point A to point B. Would be my guess, just given past Chris Robert games. But all of these added basically a couple months, added about 10 to 15 days. They're all wrapping around the same time though. So I mean, you can just sort of see It's right around the end of the year. A couple of them are drifting over, but that wouldn't stop a go no go to beta if that's what they're actually up to. I keep saying that it's going to be pretty bad, except for chapter 24. Whatever reason, chapter 24 is not on the naughty list or on the good list. I guess it's not very complicated. That's probably where you're spending all your time in recovery or something like that. They just added chapter 28 this time, which is really tiny. It's a 2-week sprint, so guessing it's a wrap up or a moving into sort of a preview of part 2 would be my guess. But anyway, that's Squadron 42. Here's another Squadron 42 asset, is Chemline. I think this is the one they showed off at the end of the vaulting and ladder climbing demo at CitCon, where they kind of said, oh, what's this? It's something top secret. Oops, what's that? We left that in there. When Chris Roberts was saying that, and that was a perfect Chris Roberts imitation. I think that's Chemline. Really, really long, although it's abandoned. But I know this is a big station, so probably that's what I'm going with. Moving on down to, and there's a lot of these that have kind of wrapped recently or still have work going on them, but there were no significant changes, so I'm kind of blurring over ones that I normally talk about. Drake Corsair, I'm going to take a little break here. One that I didn't want to talk about, where was derelict spaceships? Points of interest. This one just added 2 weeks, which not a big deal. Ending around the end of the year, but again, we're gonna get a couple derelict spaceships in there. So this is one that they're just going to keep iterating on, because the next ones they're adding are the 600i and the MSR. They've already got the Constellation, the Caterpillar, and the Starfarer. They're just going to keep adding ships into that. So I mean, eventually you're going to have Hercules and Corsairs and everything else will become these derelict ships. And of course, they've got to add derelicts for salvaging. Drake Corsair. This baby, almost done. And you can see when I'm talking about downstream teams, that's what I'm talking about right here. This is the vehicle feature team, VFX team, audio. You can all see that they're involved at the end. That's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about downstream teams. So they're in, that's good. And it'll be easily within for 3.17.4. So yeah, we're all going to get our Corsairs. Mine's named Lesigne. It's from CJ Cherry. Let's see, the entity properties plugin. Multiple entities at the same time. Okay, yeah, this is just a back-end tool. Wrapping pretty soon. Going to be big for the devs. We won't really see it on our side, but they'll definitely see it on their side. EVA Tier 2. Very, very cool one. Definitely go back and watch the demo and Chris Roberts talk, or shameless plug for my 1 hour edited version, where I keep this in there, that they kind of show you going around like Iron Manning your way around. I was really, really, really hoping this would be a sneaky add to 3.18. I think it will be, since we're getting 3.17.4. We're probably not getting 3.18 before the end of the year. EVA will probably be in 3.18. It looks cool. In fact, I'll put a card up in that region so that if you want to watch through that sort of cut down version of their speech, worth the watch. Is interesting stuff. I don't know why I had flak ammunition down. It's one of those with the big gap in between the teams, but they're going to start work, and then there's another big gap. Anytime there's these big gaps, don't count on them. It means those teams are busy working on other things, which means they'll probably get bumped off. FPS radar scanning. This is one that I think was going to be a sneaky add to 3.18. Now it might be a sneaky add to 3.8. What are we on? 3.17.4. This might be a sneaky add to 3.17.4, because radar and scanning has needed an upgrade for a while, and this would be it. This is the kind of thing where you can hide behind a like an asteroid or something like that, and it'll actually matter. you might be able to fly Nap of the Earth or Wild Weasel like low flying and occlude your signature behind a mountain. So low flying might actually have a purpose in this drops. No promises on that. That's just speculation on my part. Frontier clothing. This is what we're getting for Pyro, the clothing in Pyro. For people in NBCs, although they might drop it in. They added 14 weeks to this. So it was going to wrap, right? I think it had actually just wrapped last time I did one of these. But again, if they're going to have more time before 318 goes in, this is a Pyro asset. Why not just keep polishing? FS Aim Tac, same thing, added 14 weeks, again, ending about there. Gen 12 Render, which is one that was completed last time, they added another 14 weeks, but again, this is sort of what I mean. You see a lot of this where it wrapped the last time I did a Sprintwatch 2 weeks ago, but now they've added more time. So probably what that is just the iterative process where they're all like, well, we're not going to be able to get this patch out before X date. Why don't we just use that 14 weeks to make this as good as we can, as polished as we can, which I'm all for. Why not? Do it. Grey Cat STV, the Steve, this is the one that we just got. And I'll show you what the unannounced ship was that, oh, actually it's not on there anymore, but one of the unannounced ships bounced off and took 61 weeks. So a ship this big, 61 weeks. To give you sort of a scale for when you see those unannounced ships, they're running 50 weeks or something like that. It's something roughly as complicated as a buggy. Hacking Tier 0. This is another one that I thought would be kind of a sneaky add to either 318 or would be, it would have good synergy with 319 because I think that one will be an engineering patch. They added 2 weeks to it, so they just kicked it out a little bit more. We might get hacking in 317.4, but it would surprise me. 317.4, I think they want to keep it as simple as possible at this point. Hex, this is part of their tools. Manipulate real-time data from all microservers in the mesh. Yeah, so that's a big server meshing one, obviously. That one added 40 weeks, but again, you can see it's wrapping up here. And again, that doesn't mean they're not going to keep iterating and sprinting on it, just that's the plan. Jump points. So this is, you're not going to be able to drop Pyro in 4.0 until jump points are finished. So this right here is probably your best indicator of when 4.0, when they think 4.0 will drop. And right now, they're thinking the vehicle feature team sprint will end near the end of Q2. So just think with like 8 months to go, this team and other teams will probably jump back in and work a bit more. So yeah, you're probably looking at 4.0 at the end of next year. Probably either CitCon or IA time is when they're going to drop 4.0 would be my guess. Just that's sort of what all of this is indicating to me anyway. Life support, another big one for engineering gameplay. Had a jump. Actually, no, this one actually didn't have a jump at all. It's been 114 for a while. This is, I think, what will probably be the strongest indicator of when 319 will drop. And you can see that that ends right around Q2. So probably March to June would be a good 319 if they wanted to make that an engineering patch. And the later 318 releases, the later 319 will be. So yeah, if 318 ends up being next year, and it's looking more and more likely that it will be, then 319 will probably be a June patch. 318 will probably be a February patch, if I had to guess. Just thought, steel yourself. It's going to be a rough couple of years until they've kind of got these big ticket items in. Or find another game to play in the meantime, but the new patches, they're going to keep entertaining us by dropping Siege of Orison and Ninetales Lockdown and Jump Town on kind of a revolving circuit every couple months, I'm guessing. Map and radar system rework, so this one goes along with the scanning too. You can sort of see that that's wrapping in here. Again, it could be a sneaky add, probably not 3.17.4, but 3.18. I'm thinking that's when they're going to drop this in, and then 3.19 will be engineering. But I still think we'll get the radar, maps, EVA, and some engineering gameplay in 3. That's kind of hard. Yeah, because it was looking like this wouldn't make it for 3.18, but since 3.18 is getting pushed so much, these could make it into 3.18. Let's be optimistic. 3.18. Maps, map, radar work. Sure. Mystical Sea. Let's see. No changes in this one. Still 93 weeks. Downstream teams haven't taken a bite for a long time. I would assume they're going to. But it is just a hair over 90%. I wouldn't be surprised this stretches out a couple more weeks. So probably not getting the whole sea with 3.18, or even should get it for 3.19. I would think if they get persistent A streaming in, the whole sea should be possible for 3.19, because they'll have their cargo refactor in for a patch, and we'll be used to playing that. Server meshing will be, or entity streaming will be working. Whole sea for 3.19 should be possible. Let's see, the Mobiglass rework. I think that this is another one that is probably necessary for the map refactor and all that. That will be, let's see, they only added 3 weeks on this one, so it was wrapping pretty soon. Now it's wrapping a month out. Again, just doing a little bit more polish on it. Let's see, new missions on Orison. This is just there are some missions that are talking about putting those platforms all over Crusader so that you can go and do things. Narrative team, so just going in there. I'm sort of surprised they don't have voice acting in there. Maybe they're just going to reuse some lines. Or just have generic go and kill these guys and they'll just say usual guard things. But anyway, they only added 1 week onto this one, so that one's pretty much on target. Should be a pretty easy hit for 3.18. New player experience. This one added 6 weeks. I think that's the beginning of next year. Yeah, so probably 3.19. They'll sort of have that tutorial for new players. And on to page 2. Okay, so on to page 2, we've got ocean shaders here. Again, so this is another one of those points that I kind of like to bring up. Release 3.10. What are we moving into? 3.18. So obviously they keep working on these things and iterating on them. You can sort of see that 2 other teams got involved, like graphics, VFX, Plant Tech team is this big one here. They added 12 weeks to it, so 3 months. They're about a third of the way into that. Oceans will look prettier. They're trying to make those waves look good. So the Origin X one, I always like to point this one out because, like the other ships and other features, they'll occasionally have this big gap in between teams working on it. So if you look at it without it expanded, it just looks like they're working on the Origin X1 for like 70 weeks, which is like a year and a half in game dev time. What's actually going on is they had the sort of concept team kind of go over it and white box it out here, and then they're going to actually start building it here, and then they're going to finish it over here. With those big gaps in between it, what they're probably trying to do is time the X1 with the 600i rework, which right now we've seen concept images, but they haven't actually even started white boxing it apparently. So Yeah, X1's got a little ways to go, which is kind of surprising. I say this every time because they had a pretty solid white box. A pretty solid white box along with animations and everything, like getting onto it and stuff, but I guess they just kind of wanted to rework it. So here we are, Origin X1. Got a long ways to go till we get it. Okay, next one down is persistent streaming server meshing. So this PES that we're talking about, we're getting PES now, persistent any streaming, but you could sort of tell that they're going to be working on this and iterating on it for a while. No big surprise. So we're kind of getting the first slice of the pie, but the pie isn't, it's a tiny slice of pie, and it's a big pie that we're slicing from. But anyway, there we are. It's a big one. Physical damage and breakability, making use of physics engine to create a system that looks and behaves realistically when large objects such as ships are damaged by weaponry or colliding with other ships, locations, or plants. That's cool. It's also very cool for salvaging because you might be blowing wings off and you might have like somebody in a reclaimer coming up and just nomming them up as they fall off the ship. I just think that that's kind of cool. But you ram a ship, it's going to actually maybe dent it up or break it in half. Could be cool. They added 13 weeks to it, but again, it's wrapping. Could be a 319 thing. I don't think it'll make the cut for 318. I think 318, they've feature locked it at this point, so they're not going to add anything more to it. Although Chris Roberts did say that Tony Z was going to try to sneak a few things in there. Although I think Tony Z is mostly an AI guy, is also a game systems guy, so who knows. Physics with ropes, they added 13 weeks to this. So again, probably just polishing it. I think ropes will be important for caves and exploration, I would think. But the thing that has just blown my mind is that they haven't done a show on ropes yet, because I would really, really, really want to know what they're doing on ropes. Don't make that dirty. Let's see, did they do anything with this? Nope. I don't know why I had that clicked. Let's go down here. Pyro system. Okay, so again, this is another indicator of when 4.0 will be dropping, is obviously Pyro system, which is coming with 4.0. And look at this, again, around the end of Q2 is when they're doing it. So I'm sure they were planning on dropping Pyro in 4.0 in June of next year. I would be very surprised if it hits that mark. Rastar, which is what they're using to build the outposts and everything, they added 10 weeks, so they actually wrapped it a couple weeks ago. Now it's going to be like another roughly a month out. We're not getting Rastar anytime soon, but it's what we will eventually, the Pioneer will use Rastar to do it. And I would be absolutely shocked if we don't get a ship smaller than the Pioneer that can build smaller, simpler buildings or outposts. So the RSI links. So I wanted to mention this one. They didn't add any time to it, but up until this point, the only part that got done was the vehicle concept team took a stab. And I thought for sure that this one was going to kick down the road, but now they've actually started really building it. So now that they've started building it, they're probably going to stretch this out a little bit more. Again, the Steve took 61 weeks. The entire time, including the gap here, is taking 35. So yeah, the RSI Lynx, that's going to stretch. And for those of you who don't know, the RSI Lynx is the rover that is roughly the size of the Ursa that comes with the constellation Phoenix. So think something roughly Ursa size. So 60, 70 weeks, not totally ridiculous for that. Ship salvage, vehicle munching. So this is the next part. We're going to get vehicle stripping, where you can basically take off the skin of a ship. Vehicle munching is actually chewing up the skeleton of it and breaking that down into parts. And so it's a long ways out. It's just cool. They've actually started work on it. So moving on down, the ship CPU, which is going to be huge for people that want to run blades. Everybody thinks that they're going to run every turret on a hammerhead with blades. You will not. It will be limited by your CPU, and you will not have that many slots. You will have to hire NPCs. You will have to play with other people. That is the point of a multiplayer game. Anyway, the vehicle feature team started working on it. I think they didn't add any time to this one. It's just getting close. So we're about 2 months out on that. Again, I've been saying for a while now that I think 3.19 will be a sneaky engineering patch, and ship CPU would be an absolute necessity for that. Going back to clothing, Stanton Fashion Clothing, 34 weeks. They added 10 weeks to this, so basically this team got up to here, basically wrapped, and they said, hey, we got another couple weeks. You guys want to make more clothes? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So here we are. And moving on down, we got Star Wars improvements. So this is one that we heard about on Inside Star Citizen a few weeks ago when they were talking to the team that was doing localization. So speaking to people in their native tongues and having the lip sync match up to it and all of that. And so they were using a bunch of different languages. Star Wars. Kind of a cool little feature, flies under the radar, unless you happen to speak a language that isn't English, So, yeah, kind of cool. This is going to be, a neat game, y'all. So let's see, subsumption editor. This is what sort of defines what NPCs do and your encounters and stuff like that. Basically just interacting with the world. They added 11 weeks to it. So I have a feeling this is the thing that Tony Z is trying to sneak into 3.18. And now that he's got the extra amount of time, might do it. So if you've ever gotten on a fresh server, you'll notice the AI, the NPCs are quite a bit more difficult to tackle. Like if you do a bunker mission on a fresh server, the NPCs will start closing in on you. They'll start like flanking you and moving up and pinning you down while another one moves up. They start acting a lot more intelligently than Stupidville, where they just stand there while you snipe them down one at a time. So when persistent entity streaming comes in and those servers aren't super overloaded anymore because they're not having to load in all of Lorville for one player over there and load in all of Crusader for another player over there, the AI is going to start getting a little bit smarter and more difficult to deal with, would be my guess. And subsumption is part of that, because CIG, for whatever reason, always seems a little bit surprised when they see how derpy the NPCs are that we deal with, and that's because on their closed servers, they're seeing like the kinds of things that they're playing and that you saw for the Squadron 42 demo, where those guys were just hunting the player through there. That's the way the AI will work one day. The coil. End rant. The coil. So this is the big destroyed planet that was broken in half that has all the clouds and stuff in Squadron 42. They just VFX jumped back in, so I guess they wanted to put in more lightning bolts and stuff. Looked pretty damn good last time, so if you get a chance, look at the CitCon from, I think 2019 was when they kind of did a demo of what the coil is, and they kind of had their guys go in and do, they showed all the stuff they were doing in Houdini to make the coil look good. It looked good, and it looks like they're jumping back in. So yeah, looking forward to that one. Squadron 42 will definitely be streaming it on this platform, so stay tuned. Unannounced ships, so not much to say here. I believe this one was the Spirit. There's a couple of these that dropped off. The Spirit is still in here, so they haven't listed the Spirit up in the Crusader part yet. So the Spirit is one of these. So one of these that says vehicle concept, hopefully one of the ones that not only is a vehicle concept, but they're also working on. It would be nice to kind of see at least the cargo version come in, just have a little break from the Cutlass. Anyway, let's see. Oh, yeah. So this is the one that I want to talk about, is this one right here. So this is one that I've kind of been real curious for a while. And I mean, I don't really have a theory. Well, I mean, I have problem is I have too many theories. So this one, they expanded out for another 16 weeks. So basically added 2/3 more time to it. But this one's interesting because it's an unannounced vehicle, but there's only 2 teams working on it, audio and VFX. So I'm wondering, it doesn't necessarily have to be a ship that we're using. So what if it's like a ghost ship? Like just something that shows up on your radar that looks like one thing but turns out to be another, or like things that show up on your sensors or would blast out audio and you're kind of like, what was that? That was spooky. And then there's nothing out there. What is it? But it's unannounced. I don't know. It's a thought. There's a lot of little ghost stories in Star Citizen lore. So having an actual ghost ship out there that isn't an actual ship, it's just kind of, you might see like a little flash of something blue moving and you're kind of like, whoa, that looked like a constellation. You fly up to it and it's gone. Or something is chattering at you through your comms. Yeah, I don't know. So give me your best guess down the down below section, and I'd love to hear your theories on what kind of ship only needs audio and VFX. Ghost ship sounds good to me. Let's hear what you got. So moving on down, we got unified item ports for FPS. That's basically just the attachment volumes. So making sure that all the scopes will attach the right place, I think, and just giving them similar names so they don't have issues with naming conventions, which is always a problem in programming from what I understand. Added 14 weeks, but again, you can see it's got a little less than 2 months until they're done with that one. Not sure when we'll actually see that one. That's probably something that we wouldn't even necessarily notice on our side, but it would make life worlds easier for the devs on the other side. Volt Parallax is right here. It added 10 weeks. I think this is the rifle. Yeah, assault rifle. This is one they've shown a lot of pictures of so far, so we know what this thing looks like. It seemed pretty obvious they're going to drop it in 3.18, but they haven't said anything yet. I'm guessing we're going to be getting at least the Parallax in 3.18. Zero-G push-pull. This goes along with the new EVA Tier 2. They added another 13 weeks. So again, they said, what could you do with 13 weeks? How polished could you get this thing? Because as Chris Roberts was saying at CitCon, they just kind of had the holding place for some of those animations. Actor feature team just finished, so, and the actor tech team is taking on now, so maybe taking it the next step up and try to sneak it into 3.18 would be my guess. And gang, that's it. Thanks for sticking with me through this thing. I know this was a long one. I'll try to do what I can in editing to keep it down to minimum, but thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. I'd love to hear your theories on whatever that audio and VFX ship is, and catch me next time.